Hi everyone, welcome to Dyslexic Design Thinking, the bigger picture with amazing dyslexics. I'm your host, Gil Gershoni. Today's episode is a conversation about creativity with an award-winning children's author and a couture hat designer. Enjoy. Welcome, Flora. Welcome, Sally. So beautiful to have you here today. Sally, would you please introduce yourself and tell us in one word or a sentence, what is dyslexia means to you?
I think it means imagination and many ideas. I liked what you said about not running out of ideas. I've never run out of ideas, and yeah, I feel it. I think it is a gift of a great imagination. That's what I feel it is for me, and a love of words. So, funnily enough, I really love words. I love the shape of them, the sound of them, the color of them. I think it's one of the greatest paint pots you've got to work with. I'm very lucky.
Beautiful, beautiful. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get as a dyslexic author, award-winning author? Seems like a huge leap. Tell us a little bit about how you got there and what sort of was the inspiration for you to take such a medium that so many of us have some struggles with.
Well, I was an illustrator and I had written a few little fairy books, and then really what triggered it more than anything else was necessity. I ended up being a single parent with 3 children, and I wasn't making enough dosh, really, honestly, as just an illustrator. And I met a wolf, and he was very beautifully dressed. He wore a cashmere coat, he had shiny, shiny shoes, and he sat on a box hedge, and he said to me, "I can blow your house down." And he was a bailiff. And I thought, wow. Oh. And I had an idea called The Strongest Girl in the World, but it was written so dyslexically, I didn't think it would have any hope. So my agent said, "You've got to take it to meet this woman who can get it straightened out for you." And I cut a hole in the Sainsbury's carrier bag, and I put all my exercise books in the Sainsbury's carrier bag. And then I got on a bus and I went all the way to Soho in London. And I said to myself, if all the books fall out, I'm not meant to be a children's writer. I have to think of something else. And I remember the books were just about to go. And I remember seeing this woman running down the street with her cashmere scarf towards me. And I'm thinking, why? And she scooped the thing up and she said, "You were thinking if it fell out, you weren't going to be a writer." And I went, "No way." That wasn't what I was thinking. And she said, "Well, you're wrong." And that book got published with not one sentence changed. It's never happened. Yeah, and that was the start. After I discovered how wonderful writing could be, I just thought, wow, this is great.
Beautiful. Wow, what an amazing story. I mean, it almost sounds like the universe sort of led you and the environment around you sort of make sure that you were safe to arrive into your career and you obviously become such profound writer and an award-winning writer. Welcome to the show. Flora, welcome. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what dyslexia means to you.
Well, I think for me it's all about connections. And making links between things. As a child, I don't think anybody knew that I had it, and I didn't know even what that was until fairly recently. So, yeah, for me, I was quite a dysfunctional, quite disobedient child, quite, someone said rambunctious. So I think that it was probably to do with being misunderstood. I think for me, it's been a misunderstanding. Quite a lot of my life I've been misunderstood, and I'm trying to get my point across is quite difficult sometimes. So I think for me, the best part of it is being able to make connections between all these different disciplines. I mean, I'm obviously a fashion designer. I make things, but I'm also a teacher, and I've started writing as well. But it's really staccato, and I do need a lot of proofreaders to help me out with that.
Yeah, because you were a high achiever at school, weren't you, Flora?
I had good ideas for writing, and I could follow, if there was a structure, I could do the essays and stuff. And I hung around with the clever girls and boys, but some stuff I just couldn't remember. My short-term memory is really bad.
I love that, what you said in the book about the fact that you'd done all of that work and you were kind of went into your exam and felt all fired up, and then your mind went blank.
Yeah, I mean, they said I was going to get a B in my A-level history. I mean, histories are apparently the hardest A-level, but I could not remember a thing. And I looked around this book thinking, what are they doing? How do they know what to do? I couldn't remember anything. But so yeah, that's the more annoying side of it. But since then, knowing that I've got this, and obviously meeting you guys as well, and being in this book, it's sort of celebrated all the bits that I thought were kind of bad before. So it's flip-sided everything, and it seems to have connected the things that I do with my written work and the teaching and the making. It's all connected. Whereas I think before I thought they were very separate roles, very separate jobs. But yeah, no, it is fascinating to know more about it. And kind of it explains so much about my childhood. My parents still don't really know what it is. And my mum still, I don't think, accepts that I even have some kind of what she might think is a defect. I think my dad's probably got exactly the same thing as me. But then they just didn't know what it was.
And your dad does pretty well, doesn't he, Flora? Do you want to explain?
He's also the king of collaboration. You know, I do like to work with people, and I get very excited to find new people to do new projects with, musicians and other fashion designers or artists, poets. A friend of mine said that I should write poems, just the way that I speak, very staccato. He said, "Oh, you should just write lists, and you can call them poems." I think I've probably still got to do that.
I love that. I think that to your story, I mean, a lot of us obviously had struggled to sort of remember and understand things through the written word. As my experience, as I sort of understood the story behind the story, I can embody what was really there. And as a creative, be able to then feel where it's going and feel how that story really resonate with others, and where does it hit you in your body emotionally. Sally, I know that you also, as you write, you use different techniques to understand and to sort of tell your stories and find your cadence through it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, for me, the great liberation was, bless Mr. Steve Jobs for his Apple. And I first got one of those Apple, sort of like a Barbie Lou seat. I don't know if you remember them. They sort of clam. Oh, it was called a clam. And I was so thrilled because this little thing thought like me. There was no paperclip running around. There was just nothing. It was great. And I soon realized the copy and paste. And then I phoned up a friend and I said, it's really weird. There is blue lines, and then there's red wiggly lines, and there's blue lines and red wiggly lines. What does that mean? And there was a silence. And my friend said, tell me how there is a gap. I went, no gap, just wiggly lines. And he went, well, it is, the red is spelling and the blue is grammar. I thought, oh, well, I better beat this because it's very colourful. So I started working in colours and I double spaced it. So to begin with, it really did look very mad. But the great thing about it was that I could then work out how, in the morning I'd work in, let's say, dark red, the afternoon dark yellow, and then I could sort of put it all together like a tapestry and see what I wanted to do with it. And I'm really grateful for technology having come on as much as it has. I used to use a thing called Dragon Connect, which was pretty grim at the beginning, because unless you're American, you had to say things like Confederation, and I could never get those words right, or Philadelphia, and apparently I didn't say the accent right, like Philadelphia, and if you didn't get it right, you couldn't move on to the next word. But that's all got a lot better. And so I use lots of different techniques now, but I still use a human to get me a clean script. I can't do a script.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what Flora was saying around collaboration and really relying on our diverse community and partners and collaborators, not just to support our difference, but to actually enhance each other's abilities to sort of manifest and create. And I know, Sal, you work very closely with your editor, and you guys found the cadence and the way to sort of support each other and get your stories and do that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, someone put it rather well the other day for me. It's more like a producer.
Mm-hmm.
I need someone. I cannot for the life of me, and I don't know why. I read something one day and I think, oh, look, that is just like, that's perfect. I mean, that is pretty good. No mistakes. And I read it the next day, I think, oh, Sal, you left out all the little words. And I have no ability to get this right. I mean, I try so hard and it eludes me. But that isn't really, to me, what it's about, because it's about hearing it as well. I read and read my work out again and again and again till I call it the beat of language. And someone said to me, "What is your book going to be? The next book?" And I went, "It's going to be da 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 ba da dee da." And I did it all in music. And the person looked at me and said, as if I was mad. And I went, "No. But that's the point." It is very important to hear the words. Like I love hip hop and I love all that kind of beat of language and getting it down like a good drum, da 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 dum, da 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 dum. And you can, if you read enough of your work out and out and out again, you can hear them when it's missing what I call the beat.
Which goes a bit to what
Beautiful.
Flora, you were saying about your writing with the whole staccato thing.
I still can't remember how to say the word. I could spell it, I think, which is if you don't like the words that have become obscure, you're anti-obscuratory, obscure. It basically looks like anti-obfuscatory. It's basically words that have become obscure. Lots of researchers use lots of big words to make themselves sound clever, and I can't even say the word. Which is kind of, and I even rehearsed it before this, and I still can't remember. But yeah, there's a few words that I kind of like. I had to ask someone the other day how to spell covert, and he said, "Well, why have you asked me how to spell covert? Haven't you got Google like everybody else?" I said, "Well, if you don't know how to spell it, how do you know whether it's right? I mean, how do you put it?" I was putting couvert, corvette, covert, like almost like Corvette. Different versions of it, and he went, "Okay, yeah, fair point."
Yeah.
How do you? And I knew this person was very good at spelling, and he knew how to spell covert, and I now remember it. COVET. I thought it had an R in it, you know.
Absolutely. Sometimes a technique I sometimes use when I try to spell words, I have no idea. Sometimes I can't even think about what is the first letter. So I just sort of type it in and then I go to Google Images and I try to find a visual, because then I can be, and until I get it close enough that I was like, oh, that's how you spell it, because I can connect the visuals to the words. And I found that usually using Google Images for searching as my primary search often finds, and then I go back to the traditional searching approach, gives me a different ways of looking at a content or subject, because it creates a reference to near visuals to the same concept or image. So a technique that's kind of cool. Sally?
You should use Visual Thesaurus. Have you used Visual Thesaurus?
No.
I have, yeah.
I love it. It also has a thing on it, a microphone. So if you're in doubt of what the word sounds like and you think, oh, maybe I've got coverlet, not what I'm looking for, it will say coverlet.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Flora, what about dyslexia helps you with your creative process? Where do you see creativity sort of, sparks your process and creative sort of mind? And tell us a little bit about your process around that.
I don't know whether it's a personality thing or whether it's dyslexic, to be honest. I don't know whether it's, I think it's a sort of naive bravery. I just sort of feel like I can reach out to people and make connections. Maybe other people would sort of be a bit nervous about that. I know that I need help on so many levels. And I do find working with other people, like for instance, the thing I'm doing after this, I'm working with 2 musicians, and they just have the same sort of playful, childlike brains, even though they're grown men with wives and families. They're still very playful, and I kind of need that kind of like-minded, youthful brain, I think. I don't know whether that's the dyslexic thing or whether that's a personality thing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I know that one of the things that you talk about and a lot of us talk about is the fact that our minds are full of ideas all the time. And I know for myself, it's the question is, and as I said in the book, and you guys quoted it earlier, is that I never have a creative block. But what I do find is that I have to find how to regulate these ideas. I have to find how to sometimes slow them down so I can maybe decide which idea to focus on. How do you guys discern between all these great thoughts and ideas in collaboration and which one really speaks to you? What's your approach to that?
I learned that today.
Oh.
I only learned that today. And I think I'm the same as you. I just say yes to everything.
Right.
In an earlier talk I was in, he was the guy that I was mentioning earlier. He said, if someone comes to you and says, do you want to get involved in this project? If it's not a hell yes, that sounds fantastic, then it's cool. And so he said, that's how you should decide whether you're super excited about it initially. And if you're not super excited, you should just say no. So I might have to learn that from today.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Pretty much everything.
I can definitely learn from that. Sometimes I find that when I say no, it's not no to that project, it's yes to the ones I do want to do, because as I get immersed in the creative process, I go all in, and I want to embody the experience and the outcome and the collaboration. But if you have too much to do, then everything gets just a little less, and maybe that sort of compromise in that sense. So I can totally relate to your approach. Sally, what about you? How do you define the project that really moves you? What's your technique or approach to that?
I think I leave things on the back burner. I have ideas, lots of them. And then I sort of see it as having an old-fashioned cooker. And I sort of just let them bubble away and think if I'm really interested in them or not. The ones that really speak to me, I've already started telling the story on them. And I've started really to think about character. And then so it sounds quite mad, but I actually do talk my stories out. And they do quite well when you talk them out. But then when I write them down, they're completely different. Yeah. What on earth have I been telling myself? Because where did all this come from? I don't know. But
do you record yourself, Sally? Do you record so that you don't lose things?
I deleted all of them this week.
Yeah.
Because I can't actually. I was finishing Snow Song and I tried to do it with a recording. And I simply hated my voice. It was just not the voice for the character. And it was like, oh, stop this irritating woman. Go away. And so I just binned them all. But I do occasionally when I think, well, that's a good twist of a phrase, I will put it down, on the recording.
I was going to say, I just listened to your wonderful new book, The Snow Song, on Audible, which I have to really recommend if you want to lose yourself in another world. But I wish you'd read it. I know that that's the dyslexic's worst fear, is to read out loud. But you do speak so well, and when you read, you have the voice of whoever in your own head, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm actually going to be reading all my Tindim books that I'm doing. We've done these little books, me and my daughter, because she's the illustrator of them.
Oh, lovely.
Beautiful.
And she's done all the illustrations, and she's also dyslexic. So, yes, I'm going to read those. I am reading them. I'm recording them.
Oh, good. Is it quite unusual to write both children's and adult
totally.
fiction? Yeah.
Only recently, because Sally Gardner is on the Snow Song. So only really recently people have sort of joined up and went, oh, but you wrote for my 4-year-old. Yes, I did. And I think there's something about my brain that is very, very weird, that I call it a lift in a way. I can go right down to the child level and I can go right up again to the adult one. It's just a matter, it's a jerky journey, but I can get there.
Yeah.
And one of the keys for children for me is because I can't spell my way out of a paper bag. So one of the real keys for writing for little children is to make sure that every word you use is a word you might be able to read. And consequently, words are pretty simple.
Yeah.
I love that. I love what you're saying about that. You know, the words need to tell you the stuff immediately, that you have to really understand what it is as you put them together. And also you're talking about your process around as you go through the written process, then you have this phase where you're stitching it together. Tell me a little bit about that. That's just fascinating. How do you go about that?
Well, I write a lot. So let's say in a day I do over about 1,000, roughly about 1,500 words. And then I have a break. And then in the evening, I literally go back and I throw away most of them. And the ones I choose to keep, I sort of stitch into the document that I'm working on. And I don't mean it will stay that way, but then I work again on it. But it's a really good way of not becoming frightened of your work, in a way, to say, look, this is a living thing. It's organic. It's going to keep moving. And if you do it in colours and you stitch them together, it doesn't feel quite so frightening. I find black on white just terrifying. The minute it goes to black, I think, oh, I can't touch it now. I get very frightened about that.
Very interesting.
I do coloured strings on my book to divide them. So I've got blue for you guys, and then I've got yellow on my kind of research mapping thing, and then I've got red that I go to my notes from the science lecture from the other day. It's just so otherwise I won't know where to go in the book.
Have you got some of your notebooks, Flora? Because you use them a lot, don't you?
I've got this. I'll take you to the yellow section. I love this page. Wow.
Oh, so yeah, lovely.
Shapes with words inside. I seem to put boxes and.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And is that more for information, or is that for when you're designing a hat, or if you're collaborating? I mean, say one of the fashion houses comes to you and says they want something for a catwalk collection. How do you work in that way? Is it
send a sketch of what the sort of thing, or they usually send a mood board or kind of a few words of the kind of thing that they want. And can
you generally always see it in your head very quickly?
They usually come to me because of the materials that I'm using. Lots of people wouldn't normally make a hat out of plastic or, vacuum form things, or use car spray, or it's usually based on the materials that I use.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in that area, Flora. The way that you use unorthodox materials like wood veneer, and your hat that was made out of some wire framing. It was, I find it quite intriguing how some of your hats are really sculptural and architectural. I'm thinking, is that when the dyslexic brain kicks in? You're not thinking it as a hat, but you're thinking it as a, just a piece of art that just happens to be worn on the head.
I think of it as a structure. I don't think my interest really early on with art school was actually to do with working with bodies or humans or heads particularly. It was building structures that kind of you might react to. So I suppose it probably was more sculptural. My dad's sure that I am a sculptor, but I've kind of always rejected that because I like the idea that people wear these things now. But I have to learn that before they would just start as sort of building structures out of materials. And I think because I was quite a delinquent child, when my mum worked out that if she gave me a toolkit or a sewing box that I had something to do, it would stop me being so sort of disruptive, I suppose. So yeah, I think it's come out of yeah, my kind of behaviour as a kid. I think the making. I just love making because it makes me feel calm. And we earlier talk today was about someone mentioned the value in fidgeting.
Yeah.
I am a bit of a fidget, and I'm sitting here crocheting as we talk.
Flora, can you talk about your PVC beret, because obviously that's it's made of plastic. Yeah. Can you show what, because that's actually made of plastic.
There's two.
That is so cool.
This is made out of PVC. It's made from liquid plastic. So originally it was made in my kitchen in a fruit bowl. We filled it full of plaster, and I put a little bit of doweling in the top. So it was a kind of lump of plaster. And then we made that into a tool in aluminium, and it was spun to even it out. And so then if you can imagine a big vat of black custard PVC, hot, the metal shape goes down into the custard, and then it comes back up, and then that's the last drip.
That's
the drip. Lovely.
Make it off,
brilliant.
chuck it into the cooling.
And that hat's appeared on Italian Vogue cover, hasn't it?
This hat has been kind of like my bread and butter for the last 20 years. It's pretty much fed my kids. I do it on a regular basis.
And it was in the V&A show as well, wasn't it?
It was a collaboration with someone I did at college. I worked with a guy called Nick Crosby. He's got a company called Inflate, and he also made some plastic, molded plastic things at that time. So we worked on that together. He thinks it's still unfinished. He thinks it still needs an edge on it, but yeah. It's my silhouette now. It's my trademark, I suppose.
It so is. It's brilliant.
I can really see how you bring your dyslexia to your thought process and how you play in a non-linear way. You were talking before that you're working on a new direction and piece around moving some project into the fourth dimension.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. That was just fascinating.
Four-dimensional crocheting. It's like making a coral reef. So it's multiple. So it's maths basically, and maths was my worst subject. Because the teachers just didn't make any sense, and then they would get so angry with me, and if people get angry, you tend to stop listening, don't you? I would just shut down and just, maybe just start chatting to my friends at that point. But so math wasn't great for me, but then I do it all the time. If you're crocheting or you're knitting, you're counting. And if I'm playing ping pong, suddenly I can do maths, and if I'm playing tennis, I can do maths. But in the classroom, I really, really, really couldn't. I mean, maybe a bit of Pythagoras, because that was a bit more thinking about shapes and structures that you might use to build things.
Yeah.
So Flora, in the book you said, but when maths became practical, I could do it, which is what you're doing right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
When it made sense, or you needed
liquid measurements. They're talking about how much volumetric, how much liquid you could fit in a jar, or how you can measure the circumference of a circle. I mean, that's useful stuff. We need to know that. If you're making things, big circular shirts, you need to know how much denim to buy. So because measuring things is quite key.
Yeah.
So I do like maths. I just don't think the teaching was right for me. The way they teach it just doesn't work at all.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of us out there that I think struggling with those type of things, like with math. I can see in the chat that there are some folks that are sort of, this really resonates with them, that it's just a difficult way to sort of understand the content or the medium through the medium, I should say. And similarly with writing, I think.
Interesting. Physics became very interesting because then you're measuring. I remember that's why I like learning about eyewear. We had to get a lens. We were told to get a lens from the butchers. We had to get a pig's eyeball on the way to school and flick out the lens. And that was an amazing class. And she had a very sharp beam of light. She shone it through this lens to get the focal point. I mean, that class has stayed with me forever. Very physical experiment, and it was interesting. I would want to do it again.
Yeah.
I think physics was better for me.
Do you think that it was that you moved something from a linear to, again, the 3-dimension and be able to see it to understand the meaning of it, not just the accounting of it? Is that something?
Yeah, and you also you'd have to draw the diagrams of what was going on in the class with the Bunsen burner or whatever. You'd have to actually map out what you'd learned. I thought that was really useful. And it's more real, isn't it?
Your sketchbook, you know, you just showed us your sketchbook. That almost looked like a physics diagram with your hexagonals and circles and your linear directions.
I've got another lovely book here. Hang on. This is a book. This is a book that my brother made, actually, and it's called Design Guide to Anti-Clastic Structures, and it's basically filled with hats.
Oh wow!
Oh, beautiful.
And it looks again a bit like the crochet, but they could be inflatable structures or tents for circuses to live in. Beautiful structures, but it's all physics, maths, and engineering. So yeah, I am interested in maths. There's no doubt about it. But I just don't think it's taught very well in school. And I think I don't know what's happening now, because I certainly couldn't help out my own children with the maths because they completely changed the system of teaching maths. So it wasn't even the way that I learned it.
Yeah, same problem here.
When I was teaching my own kids, it was like, well, I can't help you with that. Sorry, you're going to have to get some other help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that taking anything that we do to move it outside of the linear format allows us to see how it connects in this sort of reality, like you're doing with the drawings and doing the mind mapping, which we heard from other dyslexics as well. That was a great tool to really understand how ideas that are far from each other connect in a very intuitive way for dyslexics. Tell me, you guys, how do you guys work with non-dyslexic, and how does that help your process? I know we hit it in the beginning of our talk, but I want to know a little bit more of how do you lean on each other, and how do you guys support that relationship? How does it help you? Sally, would you share a little bit more how you work with your editor? And
yeah, I mean, I'd like to say one other thing is that really we dyslexic people don't have any problems. We don't. The only real problem we have is the non-dyslexic world. They make our lives hell.
It's true. Sally, here.
And if they just effing left us alone, we do a lot better.
Yeah.
And how it is we're forced into a school system that doesn't work for us. And really, if we survive being in that dreadful system, which doesn't work for us, and we are still standing and got confidence, we really are going to achieve, because we've most probably been put down since the get-go.
It's not good for your self-esteem, is it, really? But I think what's great now is knowing that I've got it, that I don't have to be angry anymore, because I've just given myself a break. You know, it's like I know it takes me longer to do things. I'll do it really well, but it just takes me. But there are lots of people forget that at work. When I'm teaching, people forget that it does take me longer. It's like, can you just read that PhD by next Tuesday? Like, and then once it sort of piles up, it can stress you out a bit. But then you have to remember that, well, I can't do it in that amount of time. I do need a bit more time. So you just cut yourself some slack. Before I would just think, why can't I do it? Why is this so overwhelming? And why can they do it and I can't do it? So yeah, it was quite baffling for quite a large chunk of time.
yeah.
I think it makes you very thorough as well, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like checking and maybe having to reread. So whereas someone might just skim read something, if they can, if that comes easily to them, the fact that you've really had to understand what you're reading means that you have a better understanding and a more thorough.
Yeah, I think with work, I think maybe I at least need to learn how to do that with texting and relationships. I shouldn't be allowed to text.
Oh.
You know, with my email, I often have in my signature, it says, it says that I'm, dyslexic, and that I was dictated but not read. So it's almost like, you're asking for not forgiveness, but for understanding. And, and Sally, what you were saying about that, the rest of the world should give us the sort of platform to be who we are. I did find over the years, as I got to obviously work commercially, as you guys do, we all do, is to find what's my strength and what's my teammate's strength, and how do I work with non-dyslexics so we can help each other. Sometimes I need somebody that's so linear, and they need me because I have a well of ideas, but to sort of work together and to figure out that sort of dance, here's how we get to produce things in the world that sort of have that, Flora, as you said, it has that sort of feeling like I really want to do it, and it just sort of almost catalyzed the idea better than if I was just doing it alone. But I do think that dyslexia is a massive gift, because where others can walk, we leap, and we leap quantum leap. We can see things that you can't even understand how the two industries or two ideas, how they connect, but we can kind of see it in the blink of an eye, and we can almost feel it. We feel what's underneath it, Flora, I know that one of the things you talk a lot about is the fact that you are massive collaborators and you work with a lot of people in different industries. Do you change your practice as you're working with a musician, a dancer, an architect? What's some of the tips or some of the approaches you take to sort of catalyze that relationship?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know the answer. You have to come back to me. I think I treat everybody the same. I think maybe that's, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Some people find that quite shocking. I don't know.
No.
I think I'm just open to suggestions.
I can say you're very approachable and fun and energetic to be with, and I think you do break down barriers.
I wake up in the morning and think, well, how can I make fun? Like yesterday, it didn't go so well, but mostly I wake up and think, how can today be amusing and fun? What can I get out of today? I mean, that's why I came to Lisbon, because I just didn't want to be gloomy and grey in London in a lockdown. I just didn't want to do that. Right. How do I approach different people? I think I do approach them exactly the same. Yeah. Whether they're old, young, a child, a musician, a fashion designer. I mean, they've asked me to do something. They've come to me specifically because they know that I can do it.
Yeah.
They're probably all dyslexic, Flora.
I do think I collect them. I collect dyslexics.
I think they're all dyslexic.
Can I just ask you a technical question? When your computer has that sort of battery thing, does that mean it's running out, or does that just mean it's charging?
Does it have a little sort of a lightning bolt in it?
Yes.
So it's probably charging. It's probably charging.
Okay, good.
Let's hope. Let's hope. We only have a few more minutes to go, but we just love what you're saying. And one of the things that I experienced, obviously, we met and we had a few conversations up to this point, but really reading about you and seeing all your creativity is that you play. And I think that is something that's so important for dyslexic. Often we forget that even when we read a story, it's about understanding the human experience and condition, and that moves us. And then what do you do with that knowledge? And I know, Sally, you do the same thing, and just find different ways to sort of play and feel and really sort of ignite our emotional guidance system and go toward things that really makes us feel whole and makes us feel seen. And as much as I know, Sally, that if we all were dyslexic, maybe the world would be, maybe a little bit mad in a different way. But you work very closely, as I said before, with non-dyslexic, and I know you guys wrestle and play and look at your ideas, and I know you embrace that. Any sort of insight, any sort of thing to share around how do you work with the non-dyslexic to sort of get them or bring them along?
I worked in theatre for a very long time, and that is collaborative. And so I'm very used to collaborative working in that way. And I have a lot to bring, but I don't have what I call the straightening tools to get it as the non-dyslexic world needs to see my work. So I really need that help, and I work well with it. I always have done, and I'm very flexible. And the thing about me is I've never give up on a story. I get one story, and I've never. Writers tell me, "Oh, I had a story and I just gave up on it." I just think, "Ooh, I know. Oh no, that gets more challenging. The harder they sort of become, the more jammed into a small hole they get. The more I think, yeah, how do we get this out? What do we do now? So I've never given up on anything that I've started, which I think foxes a lot of non-dyslexic people. It's like, why would you keep going with that? But I think there's quite a lot of challenge.
Yeah. Well, Flora, I know that you also love challenges. You told a story that you love when people come to you at the last minute to ask for a really big solution for very, famous or very big events. What do you like about the fact that they come to the last minute and put all that sort of pressure on you to actually deliver something overnight often?
Tell me about like adrenaline. I've lived quite a lot of my life just on adrenaline, I think, alone, sugar and adrenaline. Yeah. I like solving the problem. It's like piecing the puzzle together. It's like a 3D, it's like a production. It just is like being a producer. You kind of, you just got to think on your feet. You just think, I know where to go to get that. I know where to buy that. I know that person can help me with this. And we build a little team instantly and then suggest how long it might take and say, put a price on it. No, I do enjoy that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, instant gratification. It's just
Flora, can you expand on the story that you were once phoned the night before for Beyonce? They asked you to design a leopard skin bikini, and they needed it the following day.
They wanted to cover her in hoodie as well. They wanted to cover her. My friend Grace, my childhood friend, she became a stylist, and she got some amazing jobs after leaving college. And she would ring me up. She knew I could make things, and she said, "Yeah, I need a bikini for Beyonce tomorrow morning. David LaChapelle's going to photograph it." And I was like, "Wow!" And I said, "Name your price." I said, "I can do whatever you want, whatever you want." That's exactly it. That's just this lastminute.com stylist ringing up, or they send you an email saying urgent, and so urgent, like it's life-threatening. It's like it's fashion. It's not urgent.
Yeah.
And so I love it and I loathe it. But the word urgent in an email from a stylist is kind of funny. But I think I made it. I can't remember. I think she ended up wearing one of the berets. They sprayed it red. I hadn't made a red one at that point, so they sprayed one with car spray.
Brilliant.
Beautiful. It's something that I know that a lot of us struggle when we read and we look at math, but really is a huge, massive talent when we do other things, is our ability to solve problems in a blink of an eye, because we can leap and jump and see everything all at the same time and at different angles and connecting it. And sometimes, I look for bigger problems. I find that when somebody comes to us and asks for a small problem, it seems like, why bother? It doesn't seem complicated. Give me something really challenging and meaty, and we're going to solve it in a very creative and passionate way. For folks out there that are struggling to find or to be sure what's, how to get their creativity going, how to find what they're good at, anything I know you guys have been sort of teaching and working with young adults and children and sort of helping them find their direction and their creativity. Any tips around how we can kind of get them to focus about the gift of dyslexia through creativity? Any thoughts or guidance there?
Well, I think for me, I think it's similar to you. I think I feel very sensory. I like the mixture of the senses. I like listening to music or I always have the radio on when I'm working. And it has to be the right kind of music, whatever I'm doing. Or if there's no music, I kind of tune in to sounds. And I think showing children everything at once, so you could have a band playing with, making a hat at the same time and doing a drawing and working with water, and lots of different sort of sensory excitement, I think makes it memorable. Mm-hmm. And then you find what your thing is. I mean, I did learn music as a kid, and I think that was I'm really, really grateful that I learned how to play and listen to music. And I think that really helps my mood as well, makes me feel calm if I'm kind of tense about not being able to manage a project. Right. I think children really should be exposed to great music, and as much art equipment as possible.
Definitely.
And just encouraged in general to have their ideas out there.
I can very much relate to that. We do listen to music often, and sometimes for the non-dyslexic, for our writing team or strategy team, they need quiet. But for me as a creative, working with the creative team, we have music all day long because it almost regulates the dyslexia a bit, and sometimes if I want to get very focused, I might put very loud music because it just sort of, like you said, it kind of helps the senses.
I really feel it. I kind of feel it. I get very involved sometimes in the music. It sort of sometimes stops me, but in a lovely way, because it just takes you on another journey in your mind. I love listening to music.
What music do you choose to listen to, or what genre when you're trying to sort of quiet your mental space, your creative space?
I mean, I collect a lot of Brazilian music. And I sometimes DJ with that. But yesterday I was listening to lots of Bach on the radio, and I like violin and piano music. Classical.
And didn't you learn Portuguese through the music as well, Flora?
Yeah, I learned some of the lyrics from some songs in Brazil. Yeah, I love it. I'm not bad at languages. Apparently, that's quite unusual to be able to speak other languages. But again, it's jerky. And just that's the word I wrote down that Sally said. It's all a bit jerky, but I can understand what people are saying. I can tune into languages.
Yeah, I can relate. Sally, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to find their calling, their dyslexia sort of creative gift?
Well, the thing is, often you don't know where it lies. I mean, I started at art school studying theatre design, and then I became a costume designer, and then I became an illustrator. And all along, I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do, because when I was 6, I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a writer. But then I discovered I couldn't work the words, and I thought, oh, well, I can't be a writer then. So it took me a really long time to get to the one thing that everyone told me I could never do. And one of my things for children is that the thing that you can never do is most probably the thing you're going to be the best at. So if you think, oh, I'm dyslexic and I can never be a writer, then I think most probably that's where your strength lies.
So maybe I'm going to be a mathematician after all.
Yeah, I just need to note that Einstein was no good at ordinary maths. He couldn't do it at all. He failed everything. But the minute it got on to higher maths, well, he could really do it. And I also think that it would take someone who was dyslexic to work out the theory, because in a way we have such trouble with time. Well, I have trouble with time. I find time to be a very difficult thing, totally man-made, and very hard to lock into.
Yeah, I can relate to the time comment. And I think time and math in a different way. I find in language, I found it all negotiable. And I think that if you look at it as a creative mind, you want things to be negotiable because that's where you can see through the mundane or through the obvious and rethink it, because you allow yourself to sort of cross over the non-negotiable sort of ways. And I think time is like it. Sometimes I can feel like I can slow down time because my mind works so fast. If I slow it down, I can do so much more with more efficiency than if I was trying to rush toward, a construct of time. And sometimes, obviously, you need to be on time. And then thank God for the non-dyslexic and the Google apps that can give you the alerts and make sure that you show up when you need to be. But I can relate to your comment around time and also that it's a journey, the journey around trying to find what soothes you, what fills you, what makes you feel complete, and trying, not being afraid to it's not a failure if you tried. You're just trying to dance with your dyslexia, with your creativity, and find where you get that balance where you actually are completely aligned and become one with it. And I know myself.
I think also one can say that failure is one of the greatest teachers, unsung heroes of education. in fact, failure teaches you far more than ever success teaches you. Success makes you very worried and think, oh God, am I going to be able to do that again? Whereas failure, you actually do learn something from it. And I always used to feel it was the most unsung teacher that's ever been in school. And in a way, if you embrace failure and you really start walking with it and say, okay, well, how can it really has a lot to give you in the way of changing something around.
Yeah.
I the other day, and I was late because I was getting lost, and I got in a taxi, and it drove not even 20 yards up the road. And then
did you give him a tip?
And it took £3.50 as well.
Amazing. Well, you guys, go ahead.
I was going to say, Sally, you have such a way with words, though. I loved in the book, you weren't even talking about dyslexia, and you have to remind me what it was about, but you wrote busy little ants taking the full stops away. And you had just the way you use words, and the fact that when you said as a kid, you just had all these stories that you had to get out of yourself, or you would have ended up in the loony bin.
I would have been.
Yeah. So tell us, did you always just speak like that, or is it that do you craft them like that?
No, I used to say that I should write them all down. I remember being small and saying, he stood out like a sore thumb in a thunderstorm. Like, what are you on about? People said it was malapropisms, but they weren't. They were more just my way of. And when I did Mag at Moon, I just wrote all my crazy stuff down that I didn't feel at all embarrassed about Standish saying. I thought, oh well, let him say it. It's great.
Yeah. And the fact your beautiful poem.
Oh yeah.
Could you know it off by heart?
I can do the poem. Do you want me to?
Yeah. Have we got time?
Yes. I have. Have we got a minute to do that? Okay, I will.
Yes.
I've got it here in case I make a mistake, because I thought I most probably would. It's called Disobey Me. I don't like the little words. They always disobey me. The does dope and is higher than a do should be. They told me I was dyslexic. It didn't describe me. Belonged in a library of words I cannot spell. No matter how many times they tell you, just try harder, sound it out. Simple if you think about. Stop giving me the third degree. Don't put me down. Don't make me fret. I cannot learn my alphabet. It doesn't go in any logical order, and all this stress is giving me attention deficit disorder. At school, I wanted to go it alone. They told me that was unwise. They called me unteachable. I was unreachable, stuck in a classroom, broken by buttons, by rules and lies. No, I don't like the little words. They always disobey me. The does and it's higher than a do should be. So they tested me, they corrected me, they found my results poor, and they told me I wasn't concentrating, and they expected more. And I did my level best, but I never made the score. And I think about Chaucer in the Freedom Days, when no one found your spelling faulty for little extra E's and A's. And Mr. Shakespeare, I wonder, do they let him write his plays? And woe is me might just be graffiti in a bog. And Hamlet, the name he came to call his prize fighter dog. No, I don't like the little words. They always disobey me. The does dope and is higher than a do should be. So you call yourself a writer? That's absurd. How do you write when you can't spell the word? Listen, it's not the way I spell that makes me want to write. It's the way I see the world that makes me want to fight. And I challenge you to see the words I do, to feel them sting your skin, the meaning often shocking the way the nib goes in, to relish discombobulate, not to moderate your passion, not to murder language in an artificial fashion. Words are our servants. We are not their slaves. It matters not how we spell them. It matters what they say. But I don't like the little words. They always disobey me. The does dope and is higher than do, re, mi.
Wow.
That was beautiful.
That should be engraved in stone on every school plaque.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant idea. I think we should look into that. I think we should look into that.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful,
well, that
beautiful.
was so moving and so beautiful and so true, I think, to so many of us. And obviously, the way that you put out these words and help us feel and show us how it all comes together and the gift of it. What a beautiful, beautiful way for us to thank you both, and for your time, for your brilliance and creativity, and being in this amazing book. Thank you for all the amazing dyslexic that gets to share their stories and to inspire us that, inspire us to share our dyslexia and creativity, and to hopefully bring the idea of dyslexia into the positive light. Thank you, everybody. Really, really enjoyed today's salon. Thank you to our guests. I hope you enjoy this episode of Dyslexic Design Thinking. We have a lot more great content coming, so make sure to like and subscribe. Dyslexic Design Thinking is produced by Gershoni Creative, created in partnership with amazing dyslexics.